Right now, without telling anybody, think of the most embarrassing thing you have ever done. Got it? Good, because your body just told on you. Somewhere under the skin of your cheeks, a few hundred tiny vessels widened without asking your permission. Your face got warmer. Your ears joined in. If one person in this room had been looking at you, they would have known that something was happening inside your head, and you did not say a single word. You are the only animal on this planet that does this. A dog caught chewing a shoe drops its head. A chimpanzee caught taking food that was not his screams and runs. Not one of them turns red about it. You do, and you cannot stop it. You cannot produce a blush on command, not for money, not for love, not for an audition. And once it starts, you cannot cancel it. It takes roughly 15 seconds to arrive. It peaks while you are still standing there, and it can take a minute and a half to drain back out of your face. For that entire time you are broadcasting. Sit with how strange that is. Evolution spent 300,000 years shaping a species that lies almost constantly. We lie about how much we slept. We lie about how much we liked the food. We lie about having read the thing we clearly did not read. And in the middle of all that talent, your own circulatory system installed a snitch. So why would a body build a system whose entire job is to expose you? Why is it in your face and not in your elbow? Why do people who have never seen a human face in their lives still do it? Every answer to this is stranger than the one before it. Let's go. Let's start with the plumbing, because the plumbing is why any of this was possible. Blushing is not magic, and it is not psychology. It is your blood arriving somewhere it was not invited. The vessels in your face open up, more warm blood pushes through the skin, and the color comes up. That part is simple. The strange part is where it happens. Draw the map of a blush on a body and you get a very specific shape. Cheeks, ears, forehead, front of the neck, the upper chest, right down to the top of a shirt. That is it. Your knees do not blush, your back does not blush. Your hands, which are involved in nearly every embarrassing thing you have ever done, do not blush at all. That map is not random. It is almost exactly the patch of skin another person can see when they are standing in front of you, at conversation distance, looking you in the face. Your body did not build a heat rash, it built a screen, and it put the screen where the audience already is. Then it wired the screen strangely. Most of the blood vessels in your skin are controlled by nerves that squeeze them shut. That is why you go pale when you are frightened. The face is the exception. The vessels in the blush region respond to a second chemical channel that opens them instead, and it opens fast. Peter Drummond, who has spent decades measuring facial blood flow at Murdoch University in Australia, showed that when you block that channel with medication, the blush weakens. Same person, same humiliation, less color. Now here is the detail that should bother you. That channel is part of the automatic nervous system. It runs your heartbeat, it runs your gut, it runs everything you were specifically not given a switch for. Your face is not connected to the part of you that makes decisions. It is connected to the part of you that keeps you alive without consulting you. Which means the signal cannot be faked, and it cannot be suppressed. Every other social gesture you own is available to liars. You can produce a smile you do not mean. You can nod at an opinion you find idiotic. You can shake a hand you would rather not touch. Nobody in the history of our species has ever successfully performed a blush. There is a second clue hiding in the timing, and almost nobody notices it. Compare a blush to every other emergency your body runs. You hear a branch snap behind you and the blood leaves your face in under a second. Your pupils are open before you have finished turning around. Your heart is already at 140. Everything your body does for survival, it does immediately, because a survival response that takes 15 seconds is a survival response that arrives at your own funeral. The blush takes 15 seconds. It is one of the slowest reflexes you own, and it is slow at the exact moment when you would most like it to be over. It builds while the room is still looking. It peaks after the joke has landed, and then it sits there, fading over a minute or more, long after the moment has passed and everyone has moved on. That is not a bug in the timing. A signal built for speed is built to be fast. A signal built to be witnessed is built to last. Your face is not trying to save you from anything. It is holding the pose until it is certain somebody has seen it. You can even measure it with a thermometer. The surface of a blushing cheek warms by around 1 to 2 degrees, and it stays warm after the color has started to fade. Which means the person who insists they are fine, they are not blushing, this is just the room being hot, is producing physical evidence against themselves in two separate formats. That single set of facts is the whole story, and it took a very stubborn Englishman to notice. In 1872, Charles Darwin published a book about facial expressions, and he called blushing the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. That was not a throwaway line. It was a confession. Blushing bothered him because it did not fit. Darwin's entire framework was built on usefulness. A trait survives because it does something. Fur keeps you warm, a hand grips, fear moves blood to your legs so you can move. And then here is this reflex whose only measurable effect is to make a socially awkward moment worse. It offers no protection. It provides no advantage in a fight. It gives you away. So he did what he always did, which was to bother everyone he knew by mail. He sent out a list of questions to missionaries, doctors, colonial officials, anybody stationed anywhere far from England, and he asked them one thing over and over. Do the people where you are turn red? The answers came back from every continent he could reach. Yes. In people with skin so dark the color could not be seen, observers described the heat, the swelling, the way the person covered their face. The behavior was everywhere. There was no population that had lost it, and no population that had invented it on its own. Then he found the case that closed the argument. There was a young woman named Laura Bridgman who had been blind and deaf since she was 2 years old. She had never seen a face turn red. She had never seen a face at all. She had no way of learning that a blush was a thing a person does. She blushed anyway. That takes apart the easy explanation completely. This is not a habit you pick up by watching adults. It is not culture. It is not manners. It arrives on schedule in a human being at around 2 or 3 years old, at almost exactly the same age they first recognize their own reflection, and it arrives whether or not there is anyone around to demonstrate it. Darwin's conclusion was elegant and a little unsettling. A blush is not triggered by guilt. It is triggered by attention, specifically by the thought of what somebody else is thinking about you. Test it on yourself. You can commit a fairly serious crime alone in a room and stay pale as a fish, but you can walk into a glass door in front of 4 strangers you will never meet again, having harmed absolutely nobody, and go the color of a sunset. The crime does not do it. The audience does it. And if you doubt how far outside your control this sits, look at how scientists have to produce one on purpose. You would assume the lab method for making somebody blush is to insult them or to ask an uncomfortable question. It does not reliably work. Insults make people angry, and anger has its own color and its own rules. So the standard trick in blushing research is stranger and much crueler. They record you singing. Then they sit you in a chair, put a sensor on your cheek, gather an audience of people you have never met, and play it back to you while everyone watches your face. That is the tool. Not pain, not fear, not accusation. Just you, watching yourself, being watched. And it works on nearly everybody, which tells you exactly what the trigger is. Not wrongdoing, not shame in any moral sense. The trigger is the sudden, unavoidable awareness of yourself as an object being evaluated by other people. Your face responds to being seen, seeing yourself. Nothing else in your body does that. So we have a signal you cannot fake, in a place everyone can see, aimed at whoever happens to be looking. Fine. That describes the machine. It does not tell us what the machine is for. For that, you have to stop thinking of the blush as an accident and start thinking of it as a payment. Picture the actual conditions your face was designed in. You live in a group. The group is not large, somewhere in the range of 100 to 150 people, and you will know most of them your whole life. There is no moving away. There is no starting over one valley across, because the next valley has its own group, and they do not need another mouth. Everything you eat because that group is willing to keep you. Meat comes back to camp and gets divided. Water gets found by somebody who knows where to look. When you break a leg, somebody carries you, and somebody feeds you for the 2 months you are useless. Alone, a human being in that landscape lasts about as long as the food they are holding. So your survival is not really about strength. It is about whether the other 99 people consider you safe to have around. And here's the problem that creates. In a group that size, everybody is watching everybody, and reputation is the only currency. You take a little extra, you break something, you say the wrong thing about somebody's mother. In a modern city, that is a bad afternoon. In that group, that is the beginning of a file. Now imagine you could prove, instantly and without words, that you knew you had crossed a line and that it upset you. Not claimed it, proved it. That is the blush. It is a receipt. It says the rules are installed in this person, they are running, and this person is already suffering the punishment internally, so you can stand down. And it works precisely because you cannot fake it. That is not a design flaw. That is the entire product. A signal that liars can copy is worth nothing within one generation, because the liars flood the market and everyone stops believing it. The only signals that survive are the expensive ones. The blush costs you something real, which is control over your own face, and that cost is what makes it credible. Which brings us to the thing this whole video has been walking toward. You were not designed to hide the way you do now. Read that again because it is the reversal. Every instinct you have about privacy, about keeping your face still, about not letting them see you sweat, is fighting hardware that was installed for the opposite purpose. Your ancestors were not built to be unreadable. They were built to be legible, on purpose. Because in a group of 150 people, being readable was the safest thing you could possibly be. Transparency was not a weakness. It was a survival strategy. And your face is the last piece of it still running. And it had to be because the other thing your group did all day was talk about each other. Studies of ordinary conversation keep landing on the same number. Somewhere around 2/3 of everything people say to each other is about other people. Who did what? Who can be relied on? Who took more than their share at the last division of meat? Language did not evolve to describe the weather. It evolved to keep the ledger. You were living inside a permanent, unwritten record maintained by 150 accountants who never took a day off, and the entry next to your name decided what happened to you when things went badly. That is the real environment your face was tuned in, not the mammoths, the gossip. Some of you are thinking, hold on, I have dark skin, this does not apply to me. Fair question, and the answer comes from a machine that measures blood flow through the skin without caring what color that skin is. Point one of those at the cheek of a person with very dark skin during an embarrassing moment, and you get the same curve as everybody else. Same rise, same peak, same slow drain. The plumbing is identical in every human population that has ever been measured. What changes is only how easily an observer can see it, and the observers adapted, which is why Darwin's correspondents in Africa and India reported the heat and the covered face rather than the color. The signal is universal. The visibility is a matter of lighting. Now all of that is a nice story about the past, and stories about the past are cheap. So let us do what actually settles arguments, which is an experiment. In 2009, a research team in the Netherlands led by Corine Dijk ran a study that sounds almost too simple. They took photographs of faces, and they made two versions of each one. Identical person, identical expression. In one version, the face was slightly redder. Then they showed participants a short story. This person did something wrong. In some versions, it was a genuine transgression, taking something that was not theirs. In others, it was a harmless disaster, knocking over a display in a shop. Then they showed a photograph and asked the participants to judge the person. How trustworthy are they? How much of this is their fault? How much do you want to punish them? The red version won every time. Same face, same crime, more color, and the participants judged them as more trustworthy, less to blame, and less deserving of consequences. Not a small effect, a consistent one. Sit with what that means. Under laboratory conditions, in strangers, in the 21st century, a completely involuntary change in facial color measurably reduces the punishment a person receives for their behavior. The reflex still functions. On you. Today. Every time. And it is part of a larger package. Dacher Keltner at Berkeley took the whole display apart, frame by frame, and found that human embarrassment is not a random flailing. It is a fixed sequence, and it takes about 5 seconds. The eyes go down first, within a second. then a small, controlled smile that gets suppressed almost immediately. Then the head turns away and down. Then, very often, a hand comes up and touches the face. The same 4 moves, in the same order, in cultures that have never traded a single word with each other. That is not etiquette. That is a program. And in later work, people who produced that display were trusted more by strangers in games involving real money. Not liked more, trusted more, which is a different and much more valuable thing. The person who visibly falls apart after making a mistake gets handed the cash. There is one more piece of evidence, and it is written into the schedule of your own life. Blushing does not stay level from the day it arrives. It has a peak, and the peak is adolescence. Ask anybody which years of their life their face betrayed them most often, and you will get the same answer. Somewhere between about 12 and 20, with a level of detail that suggests they have thought about it since. Look at what is actually happening in those years in the world your face was built for. That is the window where a young human stops being somebody the group protects automatically and starts being somebody the group has to evaluate. Are they reliable? Will they share? Are they safe to stand next to with a spear? Every alliance and every reputation that will carry a person through their adult life is being negotiated in that stretch of years, and the negotiation is done entirely by the people around them. So the honesty signal runs hottest at the exact age when being believed matters most, and it fades as your position in the group settles. That is not what an accident looks like. Accidents do not have a release schedule. So what ended it? The answer is simpler than you would like. Strangers. Every part of this system assumes one condition, and that condition is that the people watching you are people you will see again tomorrow. The whole logic of a costly signal depends on there being a relationship worth repairing. You blush. They read it. They adjust. You eat next week. Then we started living in numbers that had never existed. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. And for the first time in the history of the species, a human being could spend an entire day surrounded by faces and never once be looked at by somebody who would remember them. Your face never got the memo. It still fires at full strength in front of a cashier. It fires in front of an audience of 200 people whose names you will never learn. It fires when you are 17 and somebody looks at you a half-second too long, and it fires because a system tuned for 150 familiar faces is now being asked to run in a crowd of thousands of temporary ones. Here is the price, in numbers. Roughly 1 in 8 people will at some point in their lives meet the clinical criteria for social anxiety, and the fear of visible blushing is one of the most common complaints inside it. There is a name for the specific fear of turning red in public, and there are people who arrange their entire working lives around avoiding it. Some of them go further than that. There is a surgery, performed inside the chest, that cuts the nerve chain feeding the face, and it does work. The blushing stops. The majority of patients then start sweating heavily somewhere else on the body instead, permanently, because the system was never a single wire you could snip. It was a network doing several jobs at once, and one of those jobs was you. That is what it has come to. People are paying surgeons to remove a piece of the equipment that once kept their ancestors inside the group. So what if we have this backwards? What if the blush is not a malfunction? What if it is not shyness or weakness or a personality defect you are supposed to grow out of? What if it is a piece of equipment that works perfectly and is simply being run in the wrong environment, like a fur coat in a heat wave? What if the reason it feels unbearable in front of strangers is that it was never meant for strangers, and what you are feeling is a signal firing into a void where the answer used to come back? Because in the environment it was made for, the blush was answered. You went red, and somebody who had known you for 30 years saw it, and the matter was closed. There was a loop: signal, receipt, reconciliation. What we removed was not the signal. We removed the other half of the conversation. And here's the part I did not expect when I started reading about this. It still works. Every time it matters. The people who can actually damage your life are, with very few exceptions, the same handful of people who see you regularly. Your family, the 4 or 5 people you work beside, the friend who has watched you make the same mistake 3 times. That is your group. It is roughly the size it always was, hidden inside a much larger crowd. And in front of exactly those people, the ancient loop closes perfectly. You go red, they see it, and something in them relaxes, because they have just received proof of something you would never be able to convince them of with words. You have one honest thing left about you. One channel you cannot corrupt, cannot rehearse, and cannot use for a lie. Your face still tells the truth about you to the only people whose opinion changes anything. We traded a face that everyone around us knew how to read for a crowd that will never look twice, and most of us never even knew it was gone. So the next time it happens, and it will happen, probably this week, in a shop, over something completely trivial, try to remember what you are actually watching. Somebody just thought of the most embarrassing thing they have ever done, and 300,000 years of equipment fired on schedule to tell the room they are safe to keep. Now I want to hear yours. In the comments, what is the single stupidest thing that has ever made your face go red, and how long ago was it? Because I have a theory that none of us ever lets go of the top one.